What if I told you the same $10 bill bought dinner, gas, and a movie in the 70s, but barely covers bottled water today? And that's not even the shocking part. Back in 1978, you could fill up your gas tank for less than what a single movie ticket costs today. Wild, right? Gasoline was sitting pretty at around 36 cents per gallon. That meant your typical family sedan got a full tank for under $5. Cross-country road trips weren't just possible. They were practically a national hobby. Pack the kids, throw some sandwiches in a cooler, and hit the highway without breaking the bank. But here's where things get interesting. Those same oil crises everyone complained about in the 70s, they were just a preview of coming attractions. Today's gas prices hover around $4 per gallon in many areas. Some places push it even higher. That's more than a tenfold increase, making inflation look like a gentle suggestion rather than economic reality. The math gets even crazier when you think about it this way. A full tank in 78 cost less than a decent lunch today. Your grandparents could drive from coast to coast for what you spend on a week's worth of coffee runs. Then there's the ripple effect nobody saw coming. Those high gas prices sparked the entire fuel efficiency movement. Hybrid cars, electric vehicles, the whole 9 yards. We're still dealing with that legacy today. Speaking of things that used to be affordable, let's talk about something even more shocking than gas prices. Back in 1970, you could snag a decent house for around $23,000. That's right, the entire house cost less than what most people spend on a new car today. But here's where it gets wild. That same house, it'll run you close to $400,000 now. Makes you wonder if our grandparents knew they were sitting on gold mines, right? The math is honestly brutal. In 1980, buying a home typically cost about 2 years of your salary. Today, try 6 years if you're lucky. Some folks are working their entire 20s just to afford a down payment on what previous generations bought straight out of college. Well, here's the kicker. It wasn't just inflation doing the dirty work. Sure, money got weaker over time, but housing costs exploded way beyond normal price increases. We're talking about a complete transformation of the American dream. Your average family back then could realistically expect homeownership by their late 20s. Now it's become this massive milestone that people celebrate like winning the lottery. And the weird part is, we've got better construction technology, more efficient building methods, yet somehow everything costs exponentially more. The gap between wages and housing keeps stretching like a rubber band. Eventually, something's got to give. Speaking of things that used to be affordable and accessible to everyone. College tuition in the 70s? Try a few $100 per year at most state universities? Yeah, you heard that right. Hundreds, not thousands. My buddy's older brother went to UCLA in '76 and paid less for his entire freshman year than kids today spend on textbooks alone. But here's where it gets wild. That same education now costs over $30,000 annually at many schools. Makes you wonder if they're teaching students how to turn water into wine for those prices, right? The real kicker? Back then, you could work a summer job and actually pay for college. Crazy concept, I know. Students would flip burgers or lifeguard at the local pool, save up their cash, and boom, tuition covered. These days, you'd need to invent the next iPhone during your summer break to make that math work. What changed everything wasn't just inflation. Universities started building campus recreation centers that rival five-star resorts, hired armies of administrators with titles longer than grocery receipts, and somehow convinced everyone that college was absolutely essential for success. Well, here's the painful truth. By 1975, the average student borrowed less than $1 per student. Today, we're talking thousands upon thousands in debt before these kids even taste their first post-graduation coffee. Then, there's something even more fascinating about how we used to spend our entertainment money. Remember when seeing your favorite band didn't require taking out a second mortgage? Back in the 70s, you could catch Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, or the Rolling Stones for around $4 or $5. That's right, less than what you'd pay for a fancy coffee today. Those same artists now? You're looking at tickets that easily top $100, sometimes way more. The nosebleed seats that used to cost pocket change now require serious budget planning. But here's the kicker. It's not just inflation doing the heavy lifting here. The whole concert experience got supersized. Back then, you showed up, maybe bought a beer, and watched the show. Simple. Now we've got elaborate stage productions that cost millions, laser shows that could guide spacecraft, and sound systems worth more than most people's houses. Then there's the ticketing racket itself. Remember walking up to the box office with cash? Those days are deader than disco. Now you've got service fees, convenience charges, processing fees, and fees for the fees. It's like they're charging you for the privilege of being charged. Makes sense, right? Artists figured out they could create these massive spectacles and charge accordingly. The music industry discovered something interesting about human psychology. We'll pay premium prices for experiences we can't get at home. And speaking of things we used to afford without breaking the bank, let's talk about something that really hits where we live. New cars in the 1970s cost around $3,500. Today, well, you're looking at over $40,000 for the average vehicle. That's more than an 11-fold increase. Back then, a brand new Chevy Nova would set you back less than what most people spend on a used Honda Civic today. Makes sense, right? But here's the kicker. Those 70s cars were basically four wheels and a prayer. No airbags, no GPS, and definitely no heated seats for your delicate posterior. My neighbor still drives his 1976 Ford pickup. The thing has fewer electronic components than my coffee maker, yet it keeps chugging along like a caffeinated turtle. Meanwhile, modern cars are rolling computers that need software updates just to start properly. The push for safety features alone transformed car manufacturing costs dramatically. Anti-lock brakes, multiple airbags, backup cameras, all wonderful inventions that keep us alive but murder our wallets in the process. Then there's the environmental factor. Emission controls and fuel efficiency standards meant engineers had to completely redesign engines. Research and development costs? Astronomical. Those expenses get passed down to consumers faster than gossip at a church social. But the weird part is, we actually expect more from our vehicles now. Air conditioning was luxury in the 70s. Now it's standard equipment. We've essentially priced ourselves into demanding premium features as basics. Speaking of things that used to be luxurious, let's talk about something that was once reserved for the wealthy and glamorous. Back when Nixon was president and disco was just getting started, flying somewhere actually felt special. Airlines treated passengers like royalty. Real silverware, actual meals, and legroom that didn't require yoga certification to survive. A coast-to-coast flight might run you around $60. That's roughly $300 in today's money. Sounds expensive? Well, try booking that same flight now and watch your wallet weep. You're looking at anywhere from $400 to $800, depending on when you book and whether Mercury is in retrograde. But here's where it gets interesting. The government stepped in during 1978 with airline deregulation. Politicians promised cheaper flights for everyone. Instead, we got the aviation equivalent of a garage sale. Everything looks cheaper until you add up all the hidden costs. Remember when checking a bag was included? When snacks didn't cost more than your first car payment? Those days vanished faster than peanuts on a modern flight. Airlines discovered they could charge separately for everything. Want to choose your seat? That'll be extra. Need to breathe during the flight? Well, that's still free, but give them time. The irony stings a bit. Flying became more accessible to regular folks, but somehow less enjoyable than a root canal. Makes you wonder what happened to those cloth napkins and actual customer service. Speaking of entertainment that used to cost next to nothing, remember when going to the movies was cheaper than buying a candy bar today? Back in the 70s, you could catch the latest blockbuster for about $1.50. That's right, $1.50 for 2 hours of entertainment. Now, you're looking at $10 to $20 just for a basic ticket. And that's before you even think about popcorn that costs more than some people's lunch. But here's where it gets interesting. The price jump isn't just about inflation eating away at our wallets. Movie theaters completely reinvented themselves. They went from simple screening rooms to full-blown entertainment complexes with reclining leather seats, surround sound that could wake the dead, and screens bigger than most people's first apartments. Then came IMAX, 3D technology, and those fancy dine-in theaters where servers bring you actual meals during the show. Suddenly, watching a movie became less about the film and more about the experience. Smart business move, really. They turned a simple night out into a premium event. The weird part is, despite streaming services giving us thousands of movies at home, people still pack theaters for the big releases. We're paying 20 times more than our parents did, Yet somehow Hollywood keeps breaking box office records. Speaking of things that used to be practically free, let's talk about something that really hits where it hurts: your health insurance premiums. Remember when health insurance was just something your employer provided and nobody really thought twice about the cost? Well, back in the 70s, a typical family health plan might run around $25 per month. That's less than what most people spend on coffee these days. Fast forward to today, and families are shelling out over $600 monthly for similar coverage. That's not a typo. We're talking about a 24-fold increase that makes your mortgage payment look reasonable. But here's the kicker. Back then, a doctor's visit cost maybe $10, and that included the friendly bedside manner and a lollipop for the kids. Insurance was basically catastrophic coverage for the really big stuff. Nobody needed pre-approval to get an aspirin. Then came the technology revolution. MRI machines, advanced surgeries, miracle drugs, all amazing, but they cost serious money. Insurance companies started covering more procedures, which sounds great until you realize someone has to pay for all those fancy gadgets. The real plot twist? Employers started shifting more costs to employees. What used to be a completely free benefit became a budget-busting line item. Makes you wonder if your grandparents had the right idea about keeping things simple. Speaking of simple pleasures that got complicated, let's talk about something that used to cost a quarter and came from a friendly neighborhood diner. Remember when a cup of coffee at the local diner cost a quarter? Back in 1975, you could caffeinate yourself for 25 cents and still have change left over from your dollar bill. Those were simpler times when coffee was just coffee, hot, black, and cheap enough to refill all day without breaking the bank. Fast forward to today, and your morning brew might cost you $5 at Starbucks. That's a 2,000% increase. Your grandfather probably paid less for his entire breakfast than you do for a single latte. But here's the thing. We're not even drinking the same beverage anymore. Coffee transformed from a basic caffeine delivery system into an artisanal experience. Suddenly, everyone became a connoisseur, demanding single-origin beans from specific hillsides in Guatemala, oat milk foam art, and names like venti iced skinny vanilla latte with extra shot. The 1970s coffee shop was about function. Today's coffee culture, pure theater. We've got baristas who know more about bean terroir than most wine experts knew about grapes back then. Makes sense, right? Coffee shops became offices, meeting rooms, and social clubs all rolled into one. You're not just buying caffeine anymore, you're renting workspace, atmosphere, and Instagram-worthy aesthetics. Well, speaking of basic necessities that got fancy, let's talk about something even more fundamental. Bread, which underwent its own shocking transformation. A loaf of bread cost about 25 cents back in 1970. Your grandparents could grab a fresh loaf without even checking their wallet. Today, you're looking at $3 or more for anything decent. And don't even get me started on those artisanal sourdoughs that cost more than a movie ticket used to. But here's the thing. It's not just inflation doing the heavy lifting here. Modern bread has gone completely off the rails. We've transformed simple flour and water into some kind of culinary art project. Gluten-free this, sprouted grain that, organic everything. Your local bakery now sounds like a chemistry lab menu. Oh, I'll have the ancient grain kamut with activated charcoal, please. Remember when bread came in 2 flavors, white or wheat? Those days are long gone, friend. Now we've got more bread varieties than some towns have people, each one promising to revolutionize your digestive system or add 10 years to your life. The health craze really cranked up the prices too. Suddenly, everyone needed bread that could practically do their taxes for them. Nutritionists convinced us that regular bread was basically poison, so naturally we started paying premium prices for the good stuff. Makes sense, right? We turned our most basic food staple into a lifestyle statement. But if you think bread prices seem crazy, wait until you hear what happened to something even more fundamental. The milk that used to wash it all down. A gallon of milk cost just $1 in the 70s. $1! Your grandpa could grab milk, bread, and still have change for a candy bar. Today, you're looking at $3 to $4 for that same gallon, and that's if you're not buying the fancy organic stuff. But here's where it gets weird. Americans are actually drinking less milk now than they did back then. Way less. Yet prices keep climbing like a rocket ship to the moon? Makes sense, right? Well, not really. The dairy industry got complicated. Transportation costs exploded. Feed prices for cows went through the roof. Then there's all the fancy processing. Ultra-pasteurized, lactose-free, grass-fed, you name it. Each step adds dollars to your grocery bill. And let's not forget the competition. Back in the 70s, milk was milk, period. Now it's battling almond milk, oat milk, soy milk, and probably unicorn milk if someone figures out how to market it. When regular milk has to compete with trendy alternatives, guess what happens to the price? Environmental regulations changed everything too. Stricter rules mean higher costs for farmers, and those costs trickle down faster than spilled milk on your kitchen counter. The irony? Kids today might never experience that simple pleasure of ice-cold milk with chocolate chip cookies. But speaking of childhood favorites, wait until you hear what happened to the toys we used to beg our parents for. Remember when a brand new Star Wars figure cost you less than $2? Back in the 70s, walking into a toy store with a $5 bill made you feel like a millionaire. Hot Wheels cars were 39 cents. A complete G.I. Joe with all his gear, maybe $3 if you splurged on the deluxe version. Fast forward to today, and those same toys are worth more than some people's cars. An original 1977 Luke Skywalker still in its packaging? That'll run you anywhere from $500 to $3,000. Makes you wonder if your mom throwing away those action figures was the financial disaster of the century, right? But here's the kicker. It's not just inflation doing the heavy lifting. We're talking about pure nostalgia economics. Baby boomers who played with these toys as kids now have disposable income and a serious case of the remember whens. They're essentially buying back their childhood at premium prices. The toy grading companies didn't exist back then either. Now there's a whole industry built around putting toys in plastic cases and slapping grades on them like they're baseball cards. A mint condition toy can sell for 10 times more than one with a tiny scratch. Well, if you think toys got expensive, wait until you hear what happened to a simple meal at your local diner. Remember when taking your family out to dinner was something you could do on a whim? Back in the 70s, a hearty meal at a family restaurant might set you back $3 or $4 per person. The whole family could eat out for what a single appetizer costs today. Well, those days are long gone. Now you're looking at $20 to $30 per person for a decent meal out. And that's before drinks, tax, and tip. A simple dinner for four can easily hit $150. Your grandfather probably spent less than that feeding his family for an entire month. But here's the kicker. It's not just inflation doing the heavy lifting. Restaurants have completely transformed what dining out means. Back then, you went out to eat food. Period. Today, you're paying for an experience. Ambient lighting, craft cocktails, locally sourced ingredients, Instagram-worthy presentations, all that jazz costs money. The funny thing is, portion sizes have actually gotten bigger, but so have our expectations. We want our server to know the life story of every cow that contributed to the beef. We demand gluten-free, organic, farm-to-table everything. Makes sense, right? Then there's the labor costs. Restaurant workers expect and deserve better wages than they got 50 years ago. Someone's got to pay for that. And surprise, it's us. Speaking of things we took for granted back then, let's talk about something that literally didn't exist as a purchase. Back in the 70s, nobody paid for water. Period. You turned on the tap, filled your glass, and that was it. The idea of buying water in a bottle? Your grandparents would have thought you'd lost your marbles. You're paying for what now? They'd ask, adjusting their bifocals in disbelief. But here we are, shelling out anywhere from $1 to $3 for something that literally falls from the sky for free. That's more expensive per gallon than gasoline was back then. Makes you wonder who the real genius was in this whole scheme. The bottled water industry basically convinced us that tap water, the same stuff our parents drank without dropping dead, suddenly wasn't good enough anymore. They slapped fancy labels on it, talked about mountain springs and Arctic glaciers, and boom, we're hooked. Here's the kicker, though. Most bottled water is just filtered tap water anyway. Aquafina? Tap water. Dasani? Also tap water. They're not exactly advertising that fact on their Super Bowl commercials, are they? The real crime is how we fell for it. Marketing teams figured out how to monetize the most basic human need. It's like charging people for breathing, except somehow they made it trendy. Well, If water can transform from free to a luxury item, wait until you hear what happened to something our parents barely noticed on their monthly bills. Property taxes back in the 70s? Well, they were about as scary as a kitten wearing mittens. Most homeowners paid what felt like pocket change compared to today's wallet-draining reality. Take my neighbor's dad, who used to brag that his annual property tax was less than what people spend on coffee in a month now. He wasn't exaggerating either. The average property tax bill ran somewhere between $200 and $400 annually for most middle-class homes. But here's where it gets interesting. Cities back then were simpler beasts. No fancy bike lanes, elaborate park systems, or those ridiculously expensive municipal websites that somehow cost more than space shuttles. Fast forward to today, and property taxes can easily hit $10,000 or more annually. Makes you wonder if your house comes with a personal butler for that price, right? The real kicker? Municipal services have exploded beyond recognition. Every town needs specialized departments for everything from leaf collection to social media management. Yes, your tax dollars now fund someone's job to post pictures of road repairs on Instagram. Then there's infrastructure. Those 70s roads were built to last, but everything needs upgrading now. Smart traffic lights, fiber optic cables, electric vehicle charging stations, all funded by guess who? The math is brutal. What once represented maybe 1% of household income now devours 5 to 10% for many families, turning property ownership into an annual subscription service nobody remembers signing up for.